And now we would like to talk to you about the host identity. So who is your persona as the podcast host when you are recording? Like you would create a character for a performance, you are still in a way giving a persona, giving a character which is true of you, but you might be speaking differently to how you do in your daily life or just in general conversation with your friends. So we'd like to speak to you about how we present ourselves and why that's important to us. So we are two queer women, and that is very important to us and our identity. So we really do want to talk about LGBTQIA plus matters, and from our position as queer women and queer cis women as well. We also are two people who have mental health conditions or have had mental health conditions, and we really want to be open about that so that we can end the stigma against, or support to end the stigma against mental health. And we do talk quite openly about that and share some tips that we have received through our own self-care and through going to therapy. We are people from different cultures. I am from England and grew up in England, and Emma is from Canada and very much loves her homeland. So there are many things where we don't have the same cultural references, or we have had different childhood experiences. So we very much bring in our culture there and learn about each other's further. We are two people who are very open and honest about our emotions. We're very honest with each other as friends, and we're each other's support, and we talk very openly about how we're feeling. And we like that honesty in other podcasts, so we really want to bring that to our podcast listeners so that things that they might not feel able to talk openly about to people, they can hear us doing that then and hear us sharing. And we know, because our podcast listeners write in after each episode saying how affirmative it was to hear us saying our thoughts and our concerns and worries and our anxieties, and how it's given them hope, how it's really helped them on a difficult day. And this is exactly why we wanted to produce our podcast. So we will continue to be open and honest because we feel in a position to be able to do that. And we, of course, do have some things that we will keep private to us, but we might refer to them around the edge, but mostly we end up going into detail. And finally, we are two people who very much care about self-care. It's the way that we really think about ourselves. We do a lot of exploration of our history, of where we've come from, of trauma that we've been through, and trauma that's still there that needs unpicking. And that is to open up our hearts and open up our minds even more and bring us some inner peace for the rest of our lives. So we want to share what we've learned and discovered from other people, from our research, from therapy that we've had, and support our podcast listeners, hopefully, through sharing some of those tips. Another part of your host identity is thinking about language. Do you want to swear in your podcast? We don't swear a lot, but because it's part of our persona and character, we're quite charismatic, and sometimes things do need a swear words coming, oh fuck, or shit. So we do let those swear words in a kind of light-hearted comedic style. Or actually, I think on our heartbreak episode, we did have a moment of what the fuck? But it's about how you deliver it. And that goes with, as I said, we talk a lot about body functions. We've spoken about having hemorrhoids. We've spoken about having diarrhea, being constipated. We've spoken about farting in public. But again, it's how we deliver it. It's very charismatic, silly. We're not taking ourselves too seriously. We don't think it comes across as crude or rude. We're just being honest about the body. So whilst people may think, oh, that's so rude and disgusting, at the end of the day, everyone has these functions and these embarrassing moments. So we're trying to help make them not as embarrassing and just reassure everybody that these things can happen to our bodies. We like to talk, actually we don't like to talk, we just do talk, very animated, very happy and cheery and excited, whilst making sure to keep good diction. so that we're not talking over each other very excitedly like we do when we are just ourselves. So it's about feeling that to and fro between you. But then we do have those moments, like you would a lesson or a performance. You want the peaks and the troughs, the highs and the lows. And so we have our more down-to-earth, grounded moments when we're talking about more serious matters or traumatic things that we've been through, or difficult things that have happened to us. And we do ground ourselves because these are real moments, and we want to get that across to our listeners, that we also are, we have our sincere moments as well. It is very important to us for our host identity to be as inclusive as possible. So we want to be inclusive of, first of all, acknowledging our own privileges. We are two cis women, we are white, and we want to acknowledge this and make sure that through our topics, we're going to look at the perspective for people without those privileges. And as we said, this is also an opportunity for us to learn further about our own privilege and learn about different minority groups and minority individuals. So that is where our research comes in, so that we can be more inclusive as a whole. And it really is great when we hear back from listeners saying, particularly around matters such as queerness or trans identity, when they're saying, I didn't know about that, and it's great to learn about this now. And that is what we really want to do via a warm and welcoming podcast. And for our host identity, whilst this comes through in every episode and our podcast listeners get to know us a bit more in each episode and the things that make us us, our very first podcast episode was an introduction to ourselves, and that was to contextualize the content going forward. So whilst that one was more of just a chit chat about us, we felt it was really important for listeners who've never met us or who can't see us because they're listening to a podcast. So it might be a good idea to do an introduction to yourselves to help contextualize your point of view and the experiences that you are coming from. Around the things which are just a core part of our identity, the things that we cannot change, such as being two queer women. We also include part of our identities, which are just the things that we love. So the fact that we love amazing, colourful outfits, and we love fun patterns, and that we love horoscopes. So we make sure to bring in the things that we love, because that even makes it more exciting to talk about. Also, just like being a facilitator, we are facilitating a session in a way and a conversation with our listeners. So we make sure to include our listeners in our episode. So when we're exploring topics, we then say, Fluff podcast listeners, what do you think about that? So think about how much you want to include your podcast listeners. Like we say in theatre, is there a fourth wall where you're just having a conversation with yourselves, telling stories? Or do you want to integrate them? Sometimes we do quizzes and games where they can get involved interactively from their listening side. So much like you would when you are marketing yourself for any work, we call this your USP, your unique selling point. So hold on to that to create your identity. What is your unique selling point? Actually, we have taken a feedback from a Fluff podcast listener where we say we are comedy meets therapy meets a biology lesson on hemorrhoids. So now we would like to give you a task for host identity. And for this task, you will need to listen, please, to episode 1.5 on body hair. For the task specifically, please listen to 15 minutes, 23 seconds to 25 minutes, 35 seconds. And if you can listen to those moments and then come back and complete the task, please. So pausing the video. Welcome back. We hope you enjoyed listening to body hair episode and some of our honest anecdotes there. So for your task, please have a piece of paper and a pen. And I would like you to draw an outline of any object that first comes to mind, or an object that you really like, such as a star or a heart, maybe a flower, but there needs to be room to write inside and outside. So for example, I would pick maybe the outline of a rainbow. Now, inside of that object, we would like you to write the things that make you you, your identity, the things that do not change, your ethnicity, your race, your faith, your sexual orientation, your gender identity, where you are from. So please write those inside of your object. And then outside of your object, please write all of the things that you just love in life. What are your enjoyments, your pleasures, your hobbies, your favourite food? So for example, Emma and I would probably write hummus. And if you could please pause the video again just to complete writing inside of your object, the things which are core to your identity and you cannot change, and outside are all of the things that you love, or maybe some of the things that you just really don't like. And please pause now. Okay, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed filling in your object. Maybe you thought about some new things where you're like, no, that really does matter to me. That is part of my identity. So, bless you, Emma. And now it's important for you to think about how much or what of these things really are important for you to bring into your podcast. So now your task, please, is to record yourself talking about one of those matters. So one of those pieces of your identity which really matter to you. Please record yourself just talking about it. Record yourself for about 3 minutes just talking about it, and don't think about the audience listening, because any of your pauses or your thoughts you can edit out later. But just talk and see what happens, and have a play with if any words come up that might need explaining or perspectives. Please share with your audience how you want to describe your identity. So please pause the video and get up a recording device on your phone or electronic device and record yourself talking, and then come back.